We're in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, and chapter 4 can be basically divided up into two main sections. The first section, verses 1 through 6, can be entitled The Light of the Gospel, and then the next section, verses 7 through 18, can be described as The Treasure of the Gospel. And so this first section, the light of the gospel, it's mentioned, light is mentioned as this, it's just used as this image, talking about Jesus and the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And so Paul's talking, he, in chapter 3, talked about the being a minister of the new covenant. And then as a minister of the new covenant, he wants to focus the attention of what God actually does as part of the new covenant. Because he's trying to deflect his ministry as far as what his ability is. And he's trying to show that the glory is all God's, because it's God's power. And so he uses this example of God in the Old Testament and how God, spoke the world into existence. The world was formless, it was void, there was darkness, and God said, let there be light. And so he basically uses that example to show that is how the believer's life begins. We were held captive, and he uses this interesting phrase. He says, the God of this world. The God of this world has blinded us. Like, we could not see God for who he really is. And he's talking about Satan, the devil, the God of this world. In Ephesians, it talks about the rulers and principalities, the powers of the air. And so it's like this truth that we're in this spiritual battle. And so the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Like, there was a point where we were blinded. We were kept from seeing the light. And it says, for God, in verse 6, for God who said, let light shine out of darkness, has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And so just how God spoke the world into existence using his word, he speaks life into the believer using his word. And he basically says, let light shine out of darkness. Let there be light. And we are born again. And so there's this image of the new creation. God had set up the creation, but now he is forming a new creation by the blood of Jesus, by the light of the gospel, by the light of the knowledge of the glory of God, which is Jesus. And so we see that it is God's mercy that allows this to happen. And so we move on to the next section, and just on that same theme of the gospel, we see that this treasure of the gospel, he says in verse 7, but we have this treasure in jars of clay. And what is this treasure? It's the glory of God in the image of God, which is Jesus, the light of the knowledge of the glory that we possess. So we possess this knowledge and this experience of who God is, what he's done for us in Jesus on the cross. It is meant to show that the power belongs to God, as Paul says in verse 7, and not to us. And so we can be afflicted. He gives all these examples of what this treasure does for us, the treasure of the gospel. So we can be afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. We are always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested, so they can be shown in our lives. And so he talks about us having the same spirit, about how that all of this is so that people can be increased in thanksgiving. This grace extends to more and more people so that it can increase thanksgiving to God for the glory of God. And then he starts to close out this chapter, and obviously there's no divisions, chapter divisions, but this section he starts kind of going back to, we do not lose heart. And he says this in the beginning of the chapter, we do not lose heart. And so he says it again, so we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is renewed day by day, for this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. And he mentions this in Romans 8, something similar. He talks about how in Romans 8, how we are adopted as children of God. And verse 17 and 18, he says, and if we are children, then we're heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him, in order that we may also be glorified with him. And then he says in verse 18, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. And it's just the circumstances and the things we face, as difficult as they may be, as hard as they may be, they do not compare with the glory that is to be revealed to us in Jesus Christ through eternity.